One of the things that I found so frustrating on my own Cptsd recovery journey was the fact that even after the traumatic events that I experienced were over, even after the people that I feel were very traumatic to have in my life were gone, I still felt like I was suffering the side effects of that trauma for so long. And what I felt was one of the main things that kept me stuck was shame. So in this video, I want to deep dive into this topic of shame and how it keeps us stuck in the past, in unhealed trauma, how it affects our life, and ultimately what we can do to break free of it. So get comfortable, grab a snack, and let's dive in. For those that don't know me, my name is Michelle. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner and a survivor myself of emotional trauma, and I'm dedicated to helping as many people as possible to realize that trauma does not have to be a life sentence. I'm the founder of the School of Transformation, where I meet live every week on Zoom with survivors from all over the world. Here on my YouTube channel, I talk about healing, but in the School of Transformation, we do the inner work together. So if you're ready to take that next step, make sure you check out my links. There are two options to join. One is as a monthly member for $109.99, or you could join us for the year. I'll leave the links here so you can check out the perks for both of them. Let me know in the comment section below if you've ever felt like no matter how much you were trying to grow, heal, or achieve in your life, there's still this persistent whisper in your soul that says you're not good enough. Sometimes we might think that that's simply self-doubt, but actually it's something deeper. It's shame. So if you've ever wondered why certain patterns just keep on repeating in your life, why relationships feel so hard, or why you self-sabotage or struggle to simply feel safe being you, then this video is for you. The core wound of shame is often like this weight that we've been carrying around in our life since childhood without even realizing it's there. It's like it's been woven into our nervous system, and it literally shapes how we see ourselves, how we see others, and how we see the world. And shame has so much power when it is outside of our conscious awareness, when we don't even realize it's there. And it keeps us interlocked with trauma from the past. When we have a shame wound that goes unnoticed and unhealed, it's almost like we continue walking in life, but we've got our trauma like a ball and chain around our ankle. So let's shift into exactly what shame is and how it shows up in your life. So shame is not just a feeling, it's an embodied belief that there is something fundamentally wrong with you, and you feel it on a body level. So even if intellectually you know, I'm a good person, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm not bad, your body feels very viscerally the opposite. It often happens when we're very young in childhood, before we can even describe or understand what shame is or what feelings are, right? And it can be inflicted on purpose by over abuse, or it could be a child's perception because of certain dynamics or things that a parent says. For example, a parent that loves their child, that is not abusive, however, has their own unhealed shame wound, and maybe they've been a perfectionist their whole life and are accidentally making their child feel that unless they're perfect, then there's something wrong with them, again, because that's their unconscious wound bleeding into the relationship between parent and child. It can be formed like that as well. And so I really wanted to stress that, because I know some people will think, but my parents did love me, why do I have this shame wound? Another way a shame wound can be inflicted accidentally is if a parent is very overwhelmed. Maybe it's a single parent and they have a lot on their plate. And so anytime the child has a need, right, the parent is already overwhelmed, and the way they address the child's need can imply on an unconscious level that that child is a burden, that that child is bad for even having needs. And then the last scenario that explains how you can get a shame wound even on accident is if your parent is emotionally unavailable. And so they maybe were raised in an environment where emotions were not allowed. And so they're uncomfortable with emotions, and then along comes their child, and they wind up dismissing that child's feelings or needs because they've never learned how to be comfortable with emotions themselves. So notice, hurt people, even accidentally. And so The reason I'm giving all these different scenarios, honestly, is because the why it happened is important to help you to understand why you might be a certain way, why you might struggle with certain things. So it's helpful information, but it's not the end goal, right? We really want to work through shame regardless of why it happened. And it's not about blaming somebody or getting stuck in blaming a specific person or a situation. We want to understand it, but then we want to shift into what to do about it. Because regardless of why it was inflicted, with time, we forget. We forget why it's there, but the body still feels it. It stays alive in our body. And so as a result, the message that we learned because of shame is that we're not safe being ourselves. And since that was a pattern in childhood, right? We were being ourselves and we felt shame. Then our nervous system actually detects shame, the emotion itself, as a threat. And so to keep us from feeling it, we go into these coping skills, things like people pleasing, overachieving, perfectionism, or simply dissociating so that we don't feel anything. Those are some things that our body does when it detects that there's the shame wound. It has us stuck in these things so that we don't feel the shame. The problem with that is that it's not working with the shame. It keeps the shame from being worked on, from being felt, and therefore it continues to be active in our body. Let's talk about how it affects our relationships with other people. Oftentimes, if we think there's something wrong with us or that we're bad, or if we developed a shame wound in childhood because we had a parent that loved us conditionally, then in relationships, we tend to think we need to earn love. We need to try harder and harder to please a person. And oftentimes, when we're with somebody that may not be healthy themselves, rather than being able to detect that that is an unhealthy person, the shame wound will actually propel you to try harder and harder to please a difficult person. In fact, that's one of the biggest signs that you have an unhealed shame wound is if you find yourself in relationships with narcissistic people or difficult people, and you find yourself trying to earn their love, trying harder and harder when you should be leaving and going farther and farther from a toxic person. Another way that it shows up in relationships is if you're always shrinking yourself, but putting everyone else up on a pedestal. You put everyone first. You're not even last on your list of priorities. You're not even on the list. And often that comes from this unconscious shame wound that thinks if I have any needs or if I show who I really am, they're going to leave me. So I'm just going to make it all about them, because if I make it all about them, then maybe I'll stay connected and feel safe. And the flip side can happen as well. So, for example, if love was painful, being vulnerable was painful, having feelings and being you was painful, then sometimes a person may go to the other extreme, and rather than trying to make others happy to stay safe, they withdraw, they isolate, they become emotionally unavailable to other people, and they don't allow themselves to get close to people. So it can affect you from one end of that spectrum to the other. So it's pretty easy to see that shame will affect your relationships with other people, but that's not the only relationship that it affects. It also affects your relationship with yourself. So it often shows up in our inner dialogue, or also known as our inner critic, that voice inside that is so ready to slam us whenever we're trying. That voice that never lets us see anything good, but will point out the one bad thing we did that day, or the one thing, even if it's not bad, it's just something that we didn't like. It will dismiss the 10 things that were amazing that other people see, but we won't be able to see it. It has us hyper-focused on our defects, on finding fault with ourselves, because its story is I am bad. And so it works overtime to find evidence in our external world of that belief. I know in my case, it was bad enough to have lived through circumstances where I had people pointing out the negative all the time in me, where I had people constantly slamming me over and over and over as if I was never enough, right? I was never good enough. I just wasn't perfect, right? Don't know anyone else that is, but to them, because I wasn't, I was bad and it was somehow my fault. Then I internalized that. And so this was really overwhelming when I realized that I cleaned out my life of anyone that was making me feel that way, only to come face to face with myself in the mirror and realize I was now doing that to myself. So as you can see, shame really messes with your relationship with yourself. And then on top of it, I know with myself, I got stuck in a healing trauma loop, meaning I was trying to heal, but I was going in circles over and over and never seeming to get anywhere because I didn't realize that what was driving it was shame. The shame inside of me was like, go fix yourself. You need to fix yourself, right? So I would go to try to fix myself but the way shame tries to get you to fix yourself is by focusing on the external measures of worth. You never really feel and work with the actual wound that's inside of your body. And so you can't heal externally a wound that is internal. And so you stay stuck for so long simply because we don't know why we're doing what we're doing or why the steps we're taking to try to heal our wounds are only spinning us in circles. In fact, that's why I absolutely love talking about shame and unhealed trauma, because I know firsthand what it's like to spin and get nowhere. And I wish I knew so much of what I know now back then. It's also why I went into somatic experiencing training, because that was the missing piece. It was learning how to work with it on a body level. Just like we can't heal it externally if it's internal, we also can't intellectualize our way to heal a feeling that's in our body. So shame affects our relationships with other people. It affects our relationship with ourselves, and it also affects our nervous system. So let's shift into that. So since shame lives in our body and it's registered as a threat to our body, what happens is anytime we're in a circumstance that might bring up some shame, rather than feeling it and working through it like people that don't have trauma do, right? Because by the way, everyone feels shame at one point or another. Shame is not evidence that you're traumatized. It's actually not being able to be with it, to work through it, that gives evidence of having a traumatized nervous system. What I mean by that is that if I do something that makes me feel bad and I'm not traumatized, it's going to motivate me to make amends with a person. It's going to motivate me to not want to do that again, right? So there's nothing wrong with the emotion of shame. But if we can't feel it because our body views it as a threat, what happens is instead of working through it as who we are, we wind up getting flung into a trauma response. So someone does something, it makes me feel a little bit of shame, and all of a sudden I'm screaming at them. I've lost all control of my emotions. I'm in a major fight response. Or I feel a little bit of shame and I get over busy trying to do something so that I don't feel the shame. I'm trying to outrun the feeling. That's a flight response. Or I fawn. I abandon how I really feel and I try to make the other person happy, because the thought behind that is if I could make them happy, then I'm connected and I'm safe. And then the last one is freeze, where I just dissociate and shut down and I don't feel anything, right? The body can't be with shame when it registers it as a threat, so we get flung into a trauma response. So take a second to really reflect, like, when you feel shame, what does your body do? Which trauma response does shame choose for you? Because by the way, you do not choose your trauma response. It's done unconsciously by your nervous system. Okay, so by now, hopefully, we have a really good understanding of not only what shame is, but also how it shows up in our life in different areas of our life. But now let's talk about why it's so hard to overcome, because now that we know it, like, oh, I know, I get it, I understand it, shouldn't I just heal because I understand it? Well, that would be awesome, but it doesn't work that way, because again, shame is in the body. It's not just a thought in your mind, but it is a felt experience in your nervous system. And that's why tips like change your mindset, change your thoughts, use affirmations, why those often don't work. Because when we do those things, which are wonderful things, by the way, they're done with our mind. And shame is in our body. And our mind and our body, it's almost like they talk two different languages. Our mind speaks with words, but our body speaks with sensations. And so imagine if I have all the right tools necessary, but I'm telling you them in a language that you don't understand. It's going to be great. The information isn't wrong, but it's in the wrong language. And that's what we have to learn how to do. We have to learn how to help our mind and our body to understand each other instead of fighting for control of the body. And so not only is it challenging because our mind and our body speak two different languages, but on top of it, shame is registered as a threat. So it's very much like, imagine you're going to touch a hot burning stove with your hand. Your body is going to resist you every step of the way, even if you tell your body, I'm safe, it's okay this time it's going to be okay. Your body's like, no, it's not. It has registered that a hot stove is a threat, and it's not going to help you to want to go touch it. Well, that's kind of what happens when we're trying to heal shame. We're, in a sense, trying to tell our body that what it has registered as a threat for so long really isn't a threat. And the body's not quick to trust that because your safety is a priority. And then to make matters worse, since so many of us don't know how to be with shame in a way that actually helps it, we wind up feeling this push-pull between the mind and the body, and we wind up getting angry and pissed at our body for keeping us stuck. We get frustrated, we get annoyed at what our nervous system is doing. And so then the nervous system starts to look at you and me as a threat and hides even further inside of our body and clings even more strongly to the very coping skills that we are desperately trying to let go of. Talk about challenging, right? But I don't want to end this video on a negative note. While I want to really shine the light on what shame is and how challenging it is to overcome, I also want to let you know that it is not permanent. You weren't born with shame. It did not make up any part of your authentic self. It is the result of challenging circumstances that were outside of your control and that nobody helped you to work through. So because it wasn't a part of your authentic self, it doesn't belong there, and you can uproot it and learn to feel safe being you. I'm going to put up 3 videos that create a hierarchy on how to work with shame in a step 1, step 2, step 3 process. So if you are currently not subscribed, you're definitely going to want to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon as well so that you're notified of my upcoming videos. And if my information resonates with you and you want to work with me live, make sure you come and join the School of Transformation, because these are the things that we do. We do the inner work to heal from unhealed trauma. But regardless of whether you join me live or not, what I would love for you to take from this video is to realize that you are not broken. Shame works really hard to try to make you believe that you're broken. But the truth is, you were never broken. Your nervous system simply adapted to keep you safe. And now you have the opportunity and the power to gently begin unraveling these patterns so that you could step into your most authentic self. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments what's one way shame has shown up in your life. And if you're ready to go deeper, remember I'm going to be sharing more practices that are going to help you to learn how to feel safe in your body so that you can reclaim your authenticity.